We were backstage. They were having some kind of meeting backstage before the show starts. And all of a sudden, Bill Murray gets into a fight with Chevy Chase.
What happens when two of the biggest comedy legends collide? On the surface, they were the kings of laughter, a duo who lit up the stage and screen with their larger-than-life personalities. But behind the scenes, things weren't so funny. Tensions, insults, and an explosive showdown would cement their feud as one of the most talked-about rivalries in Hollywood's history. Years later, Chevy Chase broke his silence with shocking words about Bill Murray's behavior. Words that left everyone stunned. But what exactly did he say? And what led to their clash in the first place? Let's find out. Before their infamous feud, Chevy Chase and Bill Murray were two unstoppable forces in comedy, each carving out a place in the entertainment world with their unique styles of humor. But the seeds of their tension were planted long before their backstage clash at Saturday Night Live. Chevy Chase was the original golden boy of SNL. Joining the cast in its very first season in 1975, he shot to fame almost overnight. Known for his biting sarcasm, his physical comedy, and his role as the anchor of Weekend Update, Chase quickly became the show's breakout star. His colleagues joked that he came to believe his own hype. Cast members described him as arrogant, with Lorraine Newman once saying, "Chevy was difficult, to say the least." After just one season, Chase made what many considered a bold and controversial decision. He left SNL at the height of its success to pursue a career in film. This move, though lucrative for Chase, left the SNL cast feeling abandoned. Co-star Garrett Morris later remarked, "The guy was good, but when he left you could tell there was no love lost." Murray joined SNL in 1977 as Chase's replacement, bringing his own brand of humor, sharp, improvisational, and often unpredictable. But stepping into Chevy Chase's shoes wasn't easy. Murray faced immediate comparisons to Chase, with critics and fans either praising him as the future of the show or deriding him for not being the original. Murray was determined to prove himself, but behind the scenes, tensions simmered. Cast members reported that Chevy and Bill had very different energies. Chevy was polished and self-assured, while Bill was scrappy and willing to challenge authority. Slowly, these differences fueled an undercurrent of resentment. When Chevy Chase made his highly publicized return to SNL as a guest host in 1978, that resentment finally boiled over. "I never liked the guy," Murray later admitted in an interview. But that week, it became impossible to avoid him. The stage was set for one of the most infamous fallouts in Saturday Night Live history, one that would forever tie these two comedic titans together in rivalry. But before we get to the explosive confrontation, what really happened when the two finally came face to face? By the time Chevy Chase returned to host Saturday Night Live in February of 1978, the atmosphere at Studio 8H was already thick with unease. Chase, fresh off the success of Foul Play and still riding high as one of Hollywood's rising film stars, expected to be treated like royalty. But the cast and crew he had left behind felt otherwise. Bill Murray, now firmly established as the show's resident funny man, had little patience for Chase's return. Nearly everyone backstage knew there was bad blood between the two. Chase reportedly carried himself with an air of superiority, while Murray's fiery, no-nonsense personality only inflamed matters. Their tensions were about to reach a breaking point. Longtime writer and producer of the show Al Franken later recalled the palpable tension during rehearsals that week, who stated, "You could see it coming. Chevy made these little digs at Bill, jabbing at him in front of everyone, and Bill wasn't the kind of guy to just take it." During rehearsal, the insults flew back and forth like daggers. Chevy, known for his sharp tongue, allegedly quipped about Murray's appearance, calling him a medium talent and mocking some of his performances on the show. Murray didn't take the bait at first, but as rehearsals wore on, he finally snapped. "You're nothing but a self-serving jerk," Murray reportedly fired back, his voice filled with anger. And then came the personal blows, ones that hit closer to home. "Go f*** your wife." "Oh wait, you already did, and now she's divorcing you," Murray shot at Chase, referencing Chevy's very public marital troubles at the time. The insults stung, and witnesses said Chevy's expression went cold. The tension in the room was unbearable, but no one stepped in to diffuse it. Later, one cast member even admitted, "We just let it happen. No one wanted to get in the middle of that mess." Finally, the feud came to a head moments before the live show. According to several accounts, the two came face to face in the hallway backstage. Some say it started with more verbal jabs, while others claim it turned physical almost immediately. Murray reportedly threw the first punch, but Chevy didn't back down. It wasn't long before they were grappling with each other, their voices raised as crew members rushed to pull them apart. Jane Curtin, one of the cast members present that night, later described the incident as embarrassing and completely out of hand. "It felt like we were watching two kids on a playground fight." But the damage had been done. Though the fight was broken up before the cameras rolled, it left a lasting mark on everyone involved. Chase delivered his monologue that night with an unmistakable tension in his demeanor, while Murray delivered his sketches with a biting edge. The audience had no idea they were witnessing the fallout of one of comedy's most infamous feuds. This backstage explosion wasn't just a one-night ordeal. It set the tone for how Chase and Murray would speak about each other for years to come, and how their reputations would change in Hollywood. What happened next was even more shocking, as Chevy Chase publicly unleashed his frustration, delivering biting words about Bill Murray's behavior that no one saw coming. The fight may have ended that night backstage at SNL, but the animosity between Chevy Chase and Bill Murray was far from over. In the days and years that followed, the fallout spilled into interviews, public appearances, and lingering tension in their careers. And when Chevy Chase finally spoke about Bill Murray's behavior, his words shocked everyone. In the late 70s, as their feud became the stuff of legend, Chevy began to make pointed remarks about Murray in interviews. One of his most infamous quotes came during a press junket for foul play. When asked about the backstage fight at SNL, Chevy didn't hold back. "Bill has always been a loudmouth, but that week on set, he was impossible. Honestly, he was acting like a total slob." This set the tone for Chevy's perception of Murray in public. He accused Murray of being disruptive, accusing him of starting fights for attention. "Sure, he's funny," Chevy admitted in an interview with Rolling Stone. "But the guy has no boundaries. He runs his mouth until someone finally snaps." But Chevy didn't stop there. He added an extra sting during an appearance on a late-night talk show when asked about their infamous confrontation. He chuckled and said, "Well, Bill does two things really well: pick fights and sit around. He's very talented at both." For fans of Murray, these words seemed harsh and uncalled for, especially given Murray's growing reputation as a comedy icon and his eventual rise in films like Caddyshack and Stripes. As the feud simmered, Bill Murray mostly kept his opinions about Chase behind closed doors, but he couldn't resist the occasional jab. In a rare moment of candor, Murray was once quoted as saying, "Chevy thinks he's better than everyone else. He doesn't listen. He doesn't care. He just wants to be adored. That's why nobody on SNL liked him once he left the show." It became clear that neither of them had truly let go of the resentment they held toward each other. But what stood out most was a biting critique Chase delivered years later. Reflecting on the feud during a magazine feature in the 90s, Chevy said, "Bill's got talent. I'll give him that. But his biggest problem has always been his mouth. It's gotten him in trouble more times than I can count." What made these comments so shocking was that they struck a nerve not just with Murray, but with Hollywood itself. Writers, directors, and even co-stars began to take sides, with many rallying behind Murray's free-spirited, if occasionally impulsive, personality. Chase, on the other hand, began to cement his reputation as one of Hollywood's most difficult actors. These public remarks caused the tension between the two to remain alive for decades, and even hinted that their rivalry might never be fixed. Their feud became symbolic of what happens when egos collide in the unforgiving world of comedy. But things didn't end with words. When the two were cast together in Caddyshack just a couple of years later, the feud took on another chapter entirely. As the public clung to the rumors of their feud, Hollywood threw the two comedy giants together once again, this time on the set of the legendary golf comedy Caddyshack in 1980. But Chevy Chase and Bill Murray weren't just two stars in the same movie. This marked the first time they would have to share the screen since their explosive fight backstage at SNL. And tensions were higher than ever. What most people don't realize is that Murray and Chase were initially written to have no scenes together in Caddyshack. Director Harold Ramis and the film's writers anticipated trouble and structured the story to keep the two apart. It wasn't until the film was in production that Ramis decided they needed to add a standout scene between Chase and Murray's characters. What followed was one of the most iconic scenes in comedy history. Chase as Ty Webb awkwardly interacting with Carl Spackler, played by Murray in Carl's chaotic gopher-infested shack. Here's the twist: the scene wasn't in the original script and was almost entirely improvised. Years later, Harold Ramis reflected on the experience. "To be honest, I was worried. I thought, can these two work together without killing each other?" But somehow they pulled it off. Everything in that scene, the awkward pacing, the weird dialogue, it's all them. But behind the scenes, things weren't as smooth as they appeared on camera. Though it's widely disputed whether Chase and Murray rekindled any hostility during filming, crew members have hinted at palpable tension. One crew member revealed in a retrospective interview, "You could feel it. They were polite on the surface, but there was this undercurrent. Nobody wanted to say it outright, but they were walking on eggshells around each other." For Chase and Murray, the stakes were high. Both needed the film to succeed. Chase was trying to maintain his image as a leading man after a mixed response to his jump to Hollywood. Murray, on the other hand, was attempting to solidify a film career after showing flashes of brilliance on SNL and in 1979's Meatballs. In many ways, Caddyshack created a professional truce, not out of friendship, but necessity. Even with this ceasefire, their personalities didn't exactly mesh. One crew member claimed that Murray, ever the improviser, would test the boundaries on set, sometimes throwing ad-libs designed to throw Chase off. "It's like Bill wanted him to lose his cool," they said. Chevy would brush it off with a smirk, but you could see it was irritating him. When asked about Caddyshack years later, Chase turned to his trademark sarcasm. Working with Bill? Oh sure, it was delightful. When he wasn't trying to steal the scene, of course. Meanwhile, Murray's response was more muted, but no less sharp. "It's hard to act with a guy when you're trying not to laugh or punch him." Despite the tension, Caddyshack was a massive success, becoming a cult classic and cementing its place in comedy history. The infamous golf movie retains its magic in large part because of that singular scene between Chase and Murray, a moment where their rivalry somehow enhanced their comedic chemistry. But while Caddyshack proved they could work together, it didn't mend their personal relationship. Behind closed doors, the two continued to trade subtle jabs, and their feud remained one of comedy's worst-kept secrets. Yet their complicated relationship over the years leaves one pressing question. Did they ever truly move past it? Even as the years went by, the clash of egos between Chevy Chase and Bill Murray continued to cast a long shadow over their careers. Their feud became less about a single backstage blow-up or filming disagreements, and more about the public narratives they built around each other. Both men, though successful in their own rights, had reputations shaped in no small part by their rivalry. For Chevy Chase, the SNL alum who was once the first big star to springboard into Hollywood, his career began to cool as whispers of his on-set behavior grew louder. Known for being combative and difficult to work with, directors and co-stars started to speak out. During a 1993 interview, Dan Harmon, the creator of the comedy show Community, where Chase later starred, revealed, "Chevy brings chaos wherever he goes. He's brilliant when the camera's on, but the minute it stops rolling, you see the real Chevy, and it's not always pretty." When reflecting on his feud with Murray, Chase was never one to mince words. In a 1988 magazine interview, he referred to Murray as a guy who's funnier than he thinks, adding, "But underneath all that charm, you'd better watch your back if you cross him." Murray seemed far less interested in rekindling the drama, but was no stranger to confrontation either. His own reputation for being unpredictable and rebellious had begun to follow him through the industry. A surprising insight came from Richard Dreyfuss, who co-starred with Murray in What About Bob? From 1991. Bill can be frustrating because sometimes he just wants to rile people up. He thrives on chaos. Perhaps this is why people found his comments about Chase so striking when he finally opened up about their feud decades later. In a rare moment of reflection, Murray told The Guardian in 2010, "We were young, dumb, and full of ego. He said things, I said things. It escalated, and we both came out looking like jerks. Do I regret parts of it? Sure, but that's life." Chase, too, softened over time, though his trademark sarcasm was never far behind. In a 2008 interview, he remarked, "Look, Bill and I are always going to rub each other the wrong way, but deep down I've got respect for him. Just not enough to ever share a trailer with him again." He let out a laugh, but the truth in his comment was clear. Their relationship would never fully recover. One of the most surprising moments came during an SNL 40th anniversary special in 2015, where Chase and Murray shared a stage for the first time in years. Though they kept their interactions professional, fans couldn't help but analyze the tension that lingered in their body language. Murray later quipped about the reunion, "It's like seeing an old roommate you don't miss, but also kind of do in a weird way." But perhaps the clearest glimpse of their unresolved dynamic came during a joint interview Chase gave reflecting on his legacy. "We're two very different people," he said. "We could work together if need be. But as friends, I think we burned that bridge long ago." For fans of comedy, their feud will always be remembered as one of the most infamous rivalries in Hollywood, one fueled by wit, egos, and the undeniable pressure of fame. Yet through it all, the respect for each other's talent somehow endured even if their friendship did not. The feud between Chevy Chase and Bill Murray is more than just an isolated clash of egos. It represents a pivotal moment in comedy history, where the intense pressures of fame, the contrasting personalities of two iconic performers, and the unique dynamics of Saturday Night Live converged, creating a storm that would shape their public personas for decades. For Chevy Chase, his career became a tale of peaks and valleys. The arrogance and sharp wit that made him a star also became his Achilles' heel, cementing his reputation as difficult to work with. While his early success in movies like Vacation and Fletch earned him generations of fans, his reputation within Hollywood circles, amplified by this feud, meant that he often carried the label of a star who burned bridges rather than built them. For Bill Murray, however, the story took a different turn. While he also struggled with being labeled as unpredictable and confrontational on set, his unique charm and ability to reinvent himself helped him transition from comedy superstar to one of the most respected actors in Hollywood. Films like Lost in Translation and He Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou proved his range and his ability to evolve long after his days at SNL. But no part of their legacies has been untouched by their infamous feud. For fans of Saturday Night Live, the night Chevy Chase returned to host in 1978 is now more than just a piece of SNL trivia. It's a defining chapter in the show's mythology. Their clash backstage became symbolic of the larger struggles of working in such a high-stress, high-ego environment. It also underscored the sheer scale of pressure that comes with being a comedic voice of a generation. What makes their feud so compelling even today is how relatable it is beneath all the Hollywood glitz. It's a story of competition, bruised egos, and the struggle to stand out in an ever-demanding spotlight. But it's also a reminder that beneath every larger-than-life persona is a human being, flawed and imperfect. Now, decades later, their feud continues to be a source of fascination. It's taught fans that even comedy legends, people who make their living making others laugh, can struggle to get along. It's left behind an enduring narrative of two uniquely talented men who, for all their differences and clashes, undeniably shaped the future of comedy. Though the two men never fully repaired their relationship, their contributions to comedy speak louder than their fight ever could. In the end, their feud is a time capsule, a snapshot of an era where comedy was being redefined and where even the brightest stars couldn't escape their own humanity.